My husband, Robert, and I met as high school classmates. Our story began during a school trip in our sophomore year. I had always dreamed of becoming a doctor, while Robert harbored aspirations of becoming a lawyer. We both pursued our dreams diligently and enrolled in our respective universities. Everything seemed to be on track, but Robert faced setbacks when he failed the bar exam 5 years in a row. Eventually, he transitioned into a sales position at a large corporation. Meanwhile, after 6 years of university and 2 years of residency, I fulfilled my dream of becoming an obstetrician. "Congratulations on becoming a doctor and achieving your dream, Amy," Robert cheered, genuinely sharing in my joy as if it were his own. "Thank you. I think things are going to get even busier now. I'm sorry if I have to cancel our dates more often than before. During my residency, I was called in for emergencies several times, and now as a full-fledged obstetrician, the responsibility is even greater. Babies come on their own schedule, so I have to be ready 24/7, 365 days a year. There won't be much time for dates or anything like that," I said, feeling guilty as I explained to Robert. To my surprise, he replied, "So why don't we just get married?" "Huh? Get married?" "Yeah, that way we can always be together. You can go to work whenever you need to. If we have a child and you suddenly have to go to work, I'll support you." Surprised by his unexpected proposal, I found solace in his comforting words. I remember tearfully responding, "Thank you, I really appreciate it. Being an OB-GYN is unique. It's about bringing life into the world. While we treat illnesses too, there's a joy in this field that's unparalleled. It feels like my true calling. I'm 35 now, and I've been practicing as an OB-GYN for 9 years. I've witnessed countless births and delivered many babies. However," I continued, "Robert and I have been married for 7 years, and we haven't had any children. We both adore kids, and initially Robert was enthusiastic about having a large family. He used to say, 'I want lots of kids. I'll work hard for them.' But that eagerness has waned over time. I used to believe that having children was a blessing beyond our control, but lately it feels less important. We hardly ever go out together on our days off anymore. Robert has been spending a lot of time locked away in his room lately. He's installed a lock on the door and always ensures it's secured when he's inside. Initially, we used to sleep together in the same bedroom after we got married. However, due to my unpredictable work schedule, which sometimes requires me to leave the house in the middle of the night, we decided to sleep separately to avoid disturbing Robert. Furthermore, when I have late shifts or night duties and am not at home, Robert also tends to return home late. We have a dog at home, and we've set up a pet cam in the living room where the dog's kennel is located. This camera sends notifications to our phones whenever someone enters the house, allowing us to keep an eye on our pet. Both Robert and I are aware of the camera and can access its feed from our phones. One day, during a night shift at work, my phone buzzed with an unexpected notification. It was around the usual time Robert would return home, but something about it felt off. Taking advantage of a break, I quickly glanced at my phone. To my surprise and confusion, it displayed a video showing my husband alongside a pair of women's legs in a skirt. "What is this?" I unintentionally blurted out in the break room. Concerned nurses nearby asked if everything was all right, to which I managed a weak smile and brushed it off as nothing. After that incident, the notifications indicating Robert's return home at his usual time became more frequent on nights I worked late shifts. Each time I checked, only the woman's feet were visible in the videos. Anticipating Robert's usual reaction of feigning ignorance if confronted directly, I began marking my work shifts on our home calendar. On a day when I was off duty, I decided to wait to see who would accompany Robert home. As it turned out, it was my younger brother. Concerned about leaving our dog alone since the first instance I suspected another woman visiting, I had entrusted the dog to my brother's care. I waited in my brother's car for half an hour. True to form, Robert arrived precisely on schedule, accompanied by a woman who walked beside him, their arms linked. Seeing the scene unfold, I expected to feel overwhelmed, but perhaps having my much younger brother beside me kept me surprisingly composed. Without hesitation, I started recording a video with my phone. "My brother-in-law is bold, isn't he worried about being seen by the neighbors?" my brother remarked once I finished filming the two of them entering comfortably through the front door. "Yeah, there must be people watching. It would be strange if there weren't," I replied, nodding in agreement. Glancing around, I noticed it was rush hour, with neighbors returning home. Working irregular shifts, I hadn't previously noticed this, But it suddenly dawned on me that this was the typical time for people to arrive back home. That night, I stayed at my brother's place, enjoying time with my beloved dog before turning in for some sleep. The next day, I decided to pay a visit to a neighbor whom I trusted and shared a close bond with. I asked about Robert and the woman I had seen with him. It turned out that the neighbor had also found the situation suspicious and had inquired about it. Robert had reportedly explained that she was his sister, a response that the neighbors accepted, knowing that I also had a younger brother. With this additional confirmation from my neighbor, I began contemplating when to broach the topic of divorce with Robert. Just as I was pondering this, a familiar face appeared unexpectedly in my consultation room, issuing a warning. "Thank you in advance," said the woman who entered with a worried tone, whom I suspected to be Robert's mistress. Suppressing a gasp, I quickly composed myself. Switching into professional mode, I calmly stated, "Congratulations, you're 8 weeks pregnant." "Really? That's wonderful, doctor. Do you think it's a girl or a boy?" she asked eagerly. "We can't determine the gender yet, but everything looks good at this stage," I assured her. "Oh, I hope it's a girl. He really wants a daughter," she murmured softly, gently caressing her belly. Without prompting, she continued, "I'm not married yet, but now that I'm pregnant, I'm thinking of persuading him to marry me." "Is that so?" I responded tactfully, careful not to upset her. "Actually, he finalized his divorce just 2 months ago. Traditionally, they say you should wait 100 days before remarrying." "Really?" she replied, surprised. "Is your boyfriend, the father of your baby, here at the hospital today?" I inquired. "Yes, he's waiting for me in the car," she answered. Her face lit up with joy. I informed her that I would like to speak with him as well. With a smile, she left to fetch him. 15 minutes later, after attending to other patients in the meantime, I called her back into the room. As expected, Robert entered behind her. He awkwardly muttered, "Excuse me," upon seeing my professional demeanor. "What? Huh? Why is Amy here?" he exclaimed, glancing at the nameplate on the office wall. "No way. I use my husband's surname, not my maiden name. While many female doctors opt to keep their maiden names professionally, mine was uncommon and challenging to pronounce. In contrast, Robert's surname was the most common in the state, likely leading him to overlook it at the hospital. In my workplace, there were no other doctors with my last name in the department, so I used just my last name on the nameplate. Seeing Robert's bewildered expression, the woman looked puzzled. "Amy, that's me, right? We came in together," she said, confused. "Of course, I'm Amy," I responded, taken aback. "His lover's name is Amelia, so she must think she's Amy. But using the same nickname for your wife and mistress is beyond despicable." Caught off guard by his mistress, Robert stuttered, No, it's not like that." Sensing the need to clarify, I stepped in. "Amelia, my full name is Jamie. I also go by Amy." "What, Bobby? You've been cheating, Bobby?" I couldn't help but find it almost comical that a 35-year-old man was being called Bobby in this situation. "Huh? Oh, I get it. You have her call you Bobby. Did you tell her where I work?" No, I completely forgot you work here," Robert stammered, clearly caught off guard. It appeared he either hadn't paid attention or never bothered to inquire about where I worked. Despite this, his mistress continued to confront him. "Bobby, who is this woman?" she demanded. No. Robert struggled to come up with an explanation. "Well, I'm not surprised," his mistress asserted. "According to what I've been told, Robert divorced me 2 months ago." Confronted by Robert's silence, I decided to clarify the situation for his mistress. "Amelia, I'm Robert's wife." "What, Robert? So you lied about divorcing her to marry me?" The mistress turned to Robert, incredulous. "It's not like that right now. Just please be quiet, Amy," Robert finally interjected. "What are you saying? We need to clear this up. You've been lying to me, haven't you?" I pressed, feeling the urgency to uncover the truth. I said, "Just stop," Robert replied, clearly flustered. It was understandable. Nobody could remain composed while being accused by their mistress in front of their wife. "When did your relationship with Robert begin?" I asked the mistress, who answered honestly, "About a year ago." "I see. So you were aware that Robert was married when you started seeing him?" "Correct." I inquired further. But Bobby told me his marriage was falling apart due to his wife's constant infidelity. The mistress defended herself. "Even so, having a relationship with a married man could have consequences." I responded calmly but firmly. "But he's already divorced, right?" she asked, seeking reassurance. "We're not divorced," Robert interjected. attempting to silence his mistress once more. However, his attempt only escalated their argument in the examination room. Several nurses noticed the commotion and entered the room. Realizing this could disrupt further consultations, I promptly called for security to escort them both out. Later that night, I arranged to meet them at a coffee shop to discuss everything. During lunch, I briefed my brother on the situation and asked him to join us. As we sat down together, my brother listened to the whole story intently. Then he asked a question that struck a chord. I know it's a strange question, but why didn't you two have any children? That's it. Thank you, little brother, I exclaimed, hugging him playfully and ruffling his hair like old times. My brother chuckled and pushed me away gently but offered his unwavering support. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help. I'm not afraid of anything anymore. From now on, I'm going to hit them with the hardest punishment. That evening, as we waited for Robert and his mistress at the coffee shop, they arrived and immediately accused me. You're having an affair too, aren't you? At these words, my brother spoke up. Long time no see, brother-in-law. How have you been? Huh? Brother-in-law? You don't mean? Robert stammered, confused. Yes, I confirmed. He was just a teenager when we got married. My brother and I are 9 years apart, and in the 7 years since our wedding, he had matured significantly, making it understandable that Robert didn't recognize him. My brother continued, I'm here today as a witness, so please keep that in mind, fixing Robert and his lover with a sharp, authoritative gaze. A witness? Robert blurted out. What he didn't know was that my brother had become a lawyer specializing in divorce cases. He had been aware of Robert's repeated bar exam failures and had tactfully never brought it up. More importantly, let's continue our conversation from earlier. Here, I brought this. I presented an envelope. Inside was a divorce paper with my portion already filled out. Sign this right now. What a considerate woman, bringing the papers herself, Robert retorted, now looking rather smug as he quickly filled out the papers. Robert's lover, seemingly excited, exclaimed, After 100 days, I can officially be Mrs. CEO. I immediately asked, Mrs. CEO, what are you talking about? Robert said he's the CEO of a top-tier company, she replied, while Robert's eyes began to dart nervously. Yeah, that's right, he mumbled. I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Seeing me doubled over in laughter, Robert's lover looked perplexed. What's so funny? Oh, I'm sorry, I said, catching my breath. Who did you say is a CEO? Robert is just an ordinary office worker, and the house is under my name. Also, there's no waiting period for men to remarry after a divorce. Upon hearing this, Robert's lover was livid. What, Robert? How many times were you going to deceive me? I've had enough. I thought you loved me. Well, I thought you were rich and had a big house. Otherwise, why would I fall for an old man like you? She retorted. Watching the two bicker, my brother and I couldn't help but crack a smile. Now, it was time to send my husband further into the abyss. I swiftly handed Robert some documents. What's this now, Robert? I asked bluntly, tearing open the envelope. As he glanced at the contents, his face turned as pale as a sheet. What is this? He stammered. Do you remember when we had trouble conceiving and got ourselves checked? This is the result from back then. I didn't mention it because I knew it would hurt your ego. Is this mine? He asked, trembling. Yes, it seems you can't have children. So it was the father of the child inside her, I wonder. I replied, my voice dripping with irony. I presented Robert with the test results from years ago. According to the results, he was infertile. I had kept this from him because I believed we could still be happy together, even without children. The other woman, oblivious to her surroundings, began to make a scene. I didn't know you were infertile. Wait, so it's not your kid? Maybe the test results are fake. She hit and snapped at him, yelling, if you're seedless, it's someone else's. I didn't know who the father was planning to marry you because you earned the most. Hearing that, my brother and I were left speechless. As the two of them continued to argue, we tried to calm them down, worried they disturbed the other customers. But they were unstoppable. My brother, being a lawyer, began to explain their situation. I will be demanding compensation from both Robert and his mistress, he stated firmly. The two of them protested, crying, we don't have any money. But that wasn't our concern. My brother informed them that if they continued to complain, he would take them to court. Faced with this threat, they reluctantly agreed to pay. The next day, I promptly submitted the divorce papers and kicked Robert out of my house. Unable to manage on his own, Robert was disowned by his parents and ended up marrying his mistress, Amelia. Desperate for a child, he decided to raise her unborn baby as his own despite not knowing who the father was. Amelia likely figured it would be cheaper to raise the child together and share the burden of the compensation. Robert started working tirelessly to pay off the compensation for both himself and Amelia. Once she gave birth, Amelia planned to put the baby in daycare and find a part-time job. Meanwhile, I sold my house and stayed with my brother until I found a new place. As I was preparing to move into my new home, my brother asked me to stay, but I brushed him off, saying, "You'll never get a girlfriend if I'm around." Of course, I took the dog, and we are now happily settled in our new home. Moving forward, I plan to continue my work and remain dedicated to bringing many more lives into the world.